It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is CEO Scott Armstrong. In 2004, Scott started CKA Capital, which acquired Fairhaven Group, doing business as Brenthaven. Scott led the company to double-digit sales and profit growth, eventually selling the company to Gladstone Ventures in 2017. He remains the president and CEO of the new company called Pioneer Square Brands. Scott holds an MBA from New York University and a BA from the Jackson School of International Studies at the University of Washington. Scott Armstrong, welcome into the corner office.
Thanks, Brent.
All right, terrific to have you here. You know, we kind of always start these with learning a little bit about your early days. You know, where did you grow up, and what was your family life like?
Sure. I grew up in Portland, Oregon. My parents divorced when I was 3, and I was an only child. So I had the undivided attention of my mom. As we traversed the 70s. She was fantastic. She was my best friend and my partner in crime growing up.
Awesome. Mom worked full time, I imagine.
She did, yeah. She worked as a secretary, and that didn't pay real well, as you can imagine. So, I have memories of lots of potato soup for days on end, but I never felt like I was lacking anything. It's funny, as a kid, those things just are not real.
Right. And was Dad involved in your life at all, or did he move to another part of the country?
Yeah, he was. He remarried. I would kind of spend every other weekend with him. He eventually moved to Florida, so he was a bit out of the picture as I kind of traversed my early years.
Who were some of the other early influencers in your life growing up in Portland?
Well, my stepfather came along when I was about 7 years old. Avid businessman, definitely has had a very strong influence on my life.
Right. What kind of business was your stepdad in?
Originally, he was working for Grand Tree Furniture, selling used furniture, if you can remember that company.
Oh, sure.
He kind of went through a series of jobs. He worked for Thousand Trails, which was kind of a timeshare for RVs. People traversing the United States and staying in different properties.
Right.
And eventually he went to work for Starbucks and had a nice career there.
Right. Early days for him there? Was he kind of involved with,
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
And was that an influence on your career choice? I know you had some many years there at Starbucks as well.
Yeah, it was an interesting decision. I came back from living abroad in 2000, and it was a very good job market. And I had 5 different offers, and one of them was Starbucks. And I remember telling my stepfather about this offer, and he said, "Don't take it. Don't do it. Definitely don't do it."
He left already? Was he still there?
Yeah, he had left. He had retired. And of course I took the job because I was fascinated by Starbucks. It was a great offer. It was an opportunity to kind of try the merchandising side of things after being in brand management and marketing. And sure enough, about a year and a half after I took the job, the president of North America left the company, and they asked my stepfather to step back into the company.
Oh my gosh!
So then here I am back in the company with him, which was a a fun experience for sure.
I can imagine. Well, let's rewind a little bit. Tell us about some of the early days. Were you a good student in school?
I was, yeah. I would say I got good grades, but I wasn't necessarily a good student. I would get into a lot of trouble.
Public schools, private schools growing up in Portland?
All public schools, yeah, yeah. Grew up in a place called Portland Heights and attended a great grade school there called Ainsworth all the way through eighth grade.
I'm a U of O grad, so
Oh, okay.
a lot of friends in Portland, familiar with those areas.
Sure.
What kind of things did you do outside of class? Sports, music, theater?
Yeah, I was real active in sports. Loved soccer, loved tennis, picked up golf eventually. Yeah, I've always loved competition.
Excellent. And any sports teams? Did you compete at the high school level and then, get into sports in college at all, or was it more from a fun standpoint rather than a competitive standpoint at the athletic level?
I played on the varsity soccer team in high school, but that was the extent of my athleticism. Unfortunately, didn't quite have the ability to make it to the college level. But yeah, I mean, I think those early experiences with sports are valuable, and
Absolutely.
I continue to play tennis 5 days a week now, and yeah, not complete without a little exercise pretty much every day.
Played on the tennis team as well in high school?
I did, but I was far down the ladder, shall we say? So I wasn't on the traveling team.
Well, coaches, can also have a pretty big influence on us growing up. I know that I had a favorite one or two as I, went through my various sports. Any, from your time during those years, any coaches in particular or teachers that had a special impact on you? And if so, what that would have been?
Yeah, there was a soccer coach that had I think a very strong impact on me. He was, gosh, I must have been from like age 10 to 14. He was just this great guy, super respected by all the players. We worked hard not because he asked us to, but just because we respected him, and he always treated us like, we were kings, and so yeah, I think that was a strong early influence to see a leader like that who didn't have to scream from the sidelines. We just did what we had to do because we loved him.
Would you describe it as kind of collaborative, cooperative approach? Was he, kind of I'm supporting you guys. What do you need? How would you describe his leadership style?
Yeah, 100%. He was like, hey guys, let's, we want to win some games this year, right? So how are we going to do that? And it was more of a team approach. Okay, well, we're going to need to do this together and this together. It wasn't, it wasn't top down. It was we're a team achieving this together. And I always think back to him as kind of an early influence on me as a leader.
Learning about teams, that's important.
Yeah.
Were you doing any entrepreneurial things when you were growing up? Elementary, middle school, the paper route, selling Christmas cards at that time of year?
Yeah, actually, my first venture. This is kind of funny. My first venture was related to me getting in trouble in school. What I realized was back in my day, they'd make you write an essay. So you'd have to write an essay like why I won't do these things, right? But what I realized when I turned them in was that the teachers never read them. So, and everybody was getting in trouble, all my friends. So I would take my essays and I would copy them and then I would give them to hand to the teachers. So I'd make a couple bucks selling essays.
Selling the essays to your friends. Oh,
so
I love it.
Whenever somebody got in trouble in class, I was like, oh, great, there's another customer.
Cool. I never got busted for it.
No, not to this day.
Awesome. Anything else? Any other entrepreneurial things getting into the high school years, working retail, flipping burgers, or anything like that?
All the above. Yeah, my first job was in Fort Myers, Florida. When I went to visit my father for the summer, it was hot as hell.
Oh, goodness.
And he got me a job working at Wendy's for the summer, Wendy's hamburgers. So I show up and they give you that polyester uniform that you just feel terrible in it. And the guy gives me a broom and he says, go sweep the parking lot.
Oh my goodness.
And it must have been 100 degrees outside. And I'm sweating.
Humidity to match,
poly
I'm sure.
uniform. Oh, it was terrible. Yeah, but those are great experiences. I reflect back on that job. It was one time where I think it was the district manager or the regional manager came through the drive-through and he ordered a bacon cheeseburger. And it was my first day flipping burgers. And I forgot to put the bacon on his burger. And, of course, he blew up at my manager. My manager came down and said, "Hey, you got to be more careful." But those are great experiences.
Yeah,
You learn about the
absolutely.
details, right?
Yeah,
Business is a
yeah.
lot of times about the details, making sure that, you do exactly what you say you're going to do.
What'd you do with that spending money? Was that stuff that was expected to be set aside for university, or did mom and dad give you the flexibility and freedom to spend it on your own
Yeah, that was
pursuits?
mostly my spending money.
Good. And anything that you particularly like to do? Were you a record collector, video game player? Where did that spending money go in those early days?
Gosh, I think it probably went to dating girls, if I'm honest.
Right. That could be expensive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Terrific. So, made the decision to go to school. It looks like you stayed in the Pacific Northwest, if I'm memory serves me well. Was that kind of a foregone conclusion? Did mom and dad expect that of you? Was it something that you kind of were more self motivated about? Tell us a little bit about your decision to, pursue that college degree.
Yeah, it probably wasn't the most educated decision. I was a huge Husky football fan,
There you
so
go.
that was a big part of it. I grew up watching Husky football every weekend, and my parents said, "Here's a certain amount of money that we'll give you for college." And I had offers from some private schools that were going to be a more intense kind of quaint atmosphere, smaller classes.
Places like Reed, for example, or others.
Yeah, Santa Clara University was one. And at the time, when I just did the simple math,
Two
with
to
with
three
the
X probably
with the
cost.
amount of money they were going to give me, I could pay for the UW, and I could still have some beer money left
There
over.
you go.
So that plus Husky football kind of took me to the University of Washington.
And what'd you study in college?
So I studied. I had a double major in China studies
Uh huh.
through the Jackson School of International Studies and political science.
Now, you lived in Asia a little bit later, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But choosing China studies is kind of an interesting, subject for a kid who grew up in the Pacific Northwest and spent his summers in Florida. What motivated you for that?
Yeah, there's a couple of factors. One, I was pretty good with languages. I'd studied French and German in high school and grade school, actually, and picked those up pretty quickly and always did well in language classes. Two, my father had made some trips to China, and he always came back saying, "This is the future. Like this is going to be, a huge part of business during
He
your
wasn't
lifetime."
wrong.
No, he wasn't. I'm
I
talking like this was like the mid '80s.
was
This
going to
was
say,
pretty
yeah.
early on. No, even late '70s. Um, so it was kind of a combination of those two things. I figured, hey, if I can learn Mandarin Chinese, then I'm going to be ahead of the pack because no one else will speak that. And let's see where this leads. And so it led to a study abroad program. And obviously that experience in China and living in Asia has definitely been important in my career.
Awesome. So you did like a junior year abroad, or what was your study abroad year?
I did right after Tiananmen Square. It was literally
Early
that
80s.
August. Yeah, June. Tiananmen Square happened in June, and in August I went to
Wow.
Nanking, China, and it was a very interesting time to be in
Oh, I can
China.
imagine.
People were
Yeah.
not very open. There'd been a massive crackdown on the demonstrators in Tiananmen, but I met some great people. Just immerse myself in the language and
Ah,
the
good for
culture
you.
of China. So it was very good.
Was your Mandarin pretty strong by the time you went out there, or did it really become much more perfected living in Nanjing?
Well, it's yeah, the way the University of Washington did Mandarin Chinese classes was they would grade on a curve, and all of the about half of the class were American-born Chinese who grew up with grandparents speaking Mandarin all the time. So the ability to get a good grade in that class was very challenging, and that was part of the reason I said, hey, I need to go
Right.
immerse myself to
Good
really
for you.
become, get good grades, learn this language, and do well. So no, my language skills going over were not good, but I would say by the time I came back, I was dreaming in Mandarin. You get
That's
to that
awesome.
point. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you live with a family, or did they put you in a dorm when you were there?
We were in dorms. Yeah, it was two Westerners and one, or two Americans and one Chinese local student. Yeah.
So came back, finished up at UW. What was that first job out of college?
First job out of college was working for Princess Cruises.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I was basically running tours from Seattle up to the Rockies and then back down to Vancouver, where the the people would get on cruise ships going to Alaska. So we'd be with these 40, usually, senior citizens for about 8 days, and there was a bus driver and myself, and so I was the public speaker. I was narrating on their adventure, telling about what they were seeing, and then setting up all their dinner reservations and taking care of their any concerns they had.
Nice. Any leadership responsibilities early on there?
No, just dealing with the constant challenges
flow of customers. You're more of an individual contributor then. You weren't managing people on that first job.
No. I was on the road, 4 months of the year, leading these groups up to the Rockies and back.
What a great job. I mean, for someone who likes travel and, obviously languages. Did you have Chinese guests that came and were able to use your Mandarin at all?
Not often, no. It was usually Americans that were, headed up to Alaska.
Right.
And then
summer.
Princess would sell them on this extra excursion to the Canadian Rockies.
Any early leadership lessons from maybe bosses or mentors during those days at Princess Cruises?
We had a fantastic boss who ran all the operations managers or tour directors. His name was Mike Gallen, and Mike was one of these guys that you just loved him because he was just such a warm, friendly person, and kind of similar to my soccer coach. It was very hands off. It was like, hey, you're running this tour. This is your baby. You call me if you need anything. Here's your box of goodies. You're on your way. And so I think again that lesson was he wasn't checking up on us every night. He wasn't going through our expense reports to make sure we spent every dime appropriately. He was just there to make sure that we had a good experience and the passengers had a great experience on the tour.
Yeah, cool. Do you remember the first time you started managing people, Scott?
Oh, very well. Yeah.
Where was that?
That would be at Starbucks.
Okay. And was that right after Princess, or you had the experience in Asia, I think, first?
No, that was, So after Princess, I went to business school at NYU in New York. And then from
what was
there,
your logic around, going to the other coast and choosing NYU?
NYU at the time was ranked one of the top 5 international business programs.
Right.
So that was why I chose it. It was the best school I got into out of those 5, and had a great experience there. Met my now wife, Kim. And together we left when I graduated from business school. We moved out to Hong Kong, and I landed a great job with Bausch & Lomb working on Ray-Ban sunglasses.
Did they move you out there, or did you decide to move to Hong Kong and look for work when you were there?
No, actually, I took my last semester and went to Hong Kong on an exchange program to the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and used that as a 6-month opportunity to find a job. It didn't actually work. I graduated in June. I was having trouble kind of making inroads and getting someone, because someone had to sponsor me to live in Hong Kong, right? And so it actually happened. I was on a basketball court playing basketball with a bunch of expats, and I met this great guy, and he said, "Hey, I need somebody who can kind of help me bridge."
This is in Hong Kong?
Yeah, it's in Hong Kong. I need somebody who can help me bridge, between the cultures of Asia and China in particular, and, do this job as brand manager. Do you want to come on board? And I was like, yeah, absolutely.
Very serendipitous.
So, yeah.
And so you were there. Did you join them as a local employee, or did you come in as an expat? How did they treat you?
I was local.
Yeah, because you were already living there. What year was that, Scott?
That would be 97.
97. Mm-hmm. Cool. Great.
Right after
right after it handed over, right? Wasn't it July of 97?
It was right before.
Right before that. Yeah. Awesome. So joined them, and again, was that in an individual contributor position to start, and then managing multiple countries, from what I gathered? You also went down to New Zealand, Australia with Bausch & Lomb, correct?
Yeah, I didn't have any direct reports in the role, but I had kind of people who had dotted line into the brand management
responsibility.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So we covered everything from Korea down to Australia.
Awesome.
It was largely about rolling out marketing programs that were developed at the headquarters in Rochester, New York, and then kind of implementing those across Asia.
Great product. Been a Ray-Ban fan for a long time.
Me too.
Came back to the States then, and then took that job with Starbucks. And so kind of had a team then. Did you manage people that were kind of older than you? Was it a peer type of relationship? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, all of the above. Came into a division that it's interesting. Merch at Starbucks is a tough place because
Right.
everybody sees it every time they walk in the stores. It's very, very visible, right? How many, what's the look and feel of the mugs, and what are we doing with, the specialty gifts and the holiday packaging? It really lights up the store in a lot of ways. But it's a small part of the business, and it's also a food and beverage company at its core, right? That's where the margins are. So being in merch is an interesting place. We had big goals, and the other challenge is that when you're opening so many stores every year, some of them right next to each other, right? The opportunity to sell hard goods their cannibalization occurs, right? So yeah, it was a really interesting challenge, and it was a great opportunity for me to go from being kind of a brand manager, kind of theoretical, how do we treat this brand, to hey, I'm actually responsible for driving the sales of this category. Well, I would call it contribution margin. But but a little more hands-on, a little more kind of driving a sales line.
And so, any early lessons from managing people in that role?
Yeah, many. Starbucks is a great culture. It's a values-based culture, which I really loved.
Was Howard still running the show then, or was that during his time out?
Yeah, he was running the show. Howard would come down and take a look at the holiday assortments before they went on the floor, so he was still very active. I learned a lot in that role. It was a great experience. I think the main thing I learned is that I probably, like a lot of kind of junior managers, I thought I had to have all the answers, and I realized over time that really was not the case. That what I needed to have was the ability to bring people into an environment where we could all tee up the challenges and work on them together.
And really kind of learn about diversity of experience and skill sets.
Absolutely. Yeah, we talked about that a lot.
What were some of the best or worst lessons you had from previous bosses during those Starbucks years? You don't have to name any names, Scott.
Yeah. There was a lot of turmoil and transition when I was there. I think if one time I counted them up in my, 3.5 years there, I had about 4 or 5 different supervisors. And so I got to see lots of different takes on, how to get things done. And one guy would come in and say, just get it done. And the other guy would say, you got to make sure you build relationships along the way. So I can't really point to one person during that time, but I think I tried both approaches, and I definitely found that being a bulldozer, while I could get things done and then ask for forgiveness later, it wasn't really the best way to move things forward.
Yeah, but you had some bosses like that, it sounds like, along the way.
For sure.
Yeah. So you kind of learned that collaborative, cooperative approach early on. How would you say your leadership style has kind of evolved over time as you found your way to the corner office?
Well, I would say first and foremost, I have this fear of being a micromanager, because that's we all had those kind of managers growing up, and I never want to be that guy. I believe that we hire people to do a job, and we need to let them do that job, right? And so when someone comes on board in our company, I spend a lot of time with them early on. I do a 30, 60, 90-day success plan where they're getting a lot of feedback from me. Hey, here's what's going well, here's what's not. I get aligned with them.
Is this just with your direct reports, or do you do it also a level down?
Just my direct reports. Yeah, that would be too much to do this for everyone, but
that's their responsibility.
That's right. That's their responsibility. But I spend a lot of time with them, lots of feedback, make sure that we kind of get on the right course early, that we get aligned on what the goals are for the company and for their role. And then, I have currently 13 direct reports. So it's a lot to manage.
That's a big suite.
Yeah. So I can then take a step back and just be there as kind of their support function to say, hey, I'm here to clear roadblocks. What challenge are you facing? And a lot of times I'm the guy that connects the dots. Oh, well, you need to talk to this person, or hey, let me talk with this guy and see if we can get that, block moved for you, or that obstacle moved for you. So that's and some people flourish in that environment. Some people just love that ability to kind of like run their own ship, right? Run their own business. Other people don't.
Yeah,
Other
they need a little
people,
more direction.
they need a lot more direction. And so I've learned that, depending on the person, I have to be sensitive to the fact that my management style, my leadership style may not work for everyone, and I have to adapt for different people.
That's a good segue into our next area, which is kind of company culture. You work for some great companies. I know Princess well. We've actually I've never had them as a client, but I've poached a lot of people there
Oh
into
yeah.
various hospitality jobs I've had over the years. I'm obviously very familiar with Ray-Ban and Bausch and Lomb, and of course Starbucks. Terrific story. I actually interviewed for them, believe it or not, as head of their Asia Pacific region. Like you, I lived in
Is that
Asia for
right?
about 10 years. Yeah.
Ah, okay,
I
interesting.
left actually in '98. So as you were coming in, I was on my way out. But I
Okay.
was in Hong Kong for the transition, which was kind of an
Oh,
interesting party.
wow.
But now you're in the middle market, and been working with companies that are, of course, a fraction of the size. And tell us a little bit about your thoughts on building a company culture, kind of where you've been, what you've seen, and then what you've either had to do in your role as kind of the leader or not of company culture building within the smaller companies you've been with.
Yeah, well, first of all, in a small company, the leader very much sets the tone for that culture, right? I mean, you every day, the face you put on when you come in the office determines, how those people are going to feel, and ultimately over time that becomes the culture of the business. So setting that example, and being genuine. I'm not saying you put a smiley face on every day you come in, being genuine, but knowing that the impact I'm having is direct on our culture every single day, every interaction I have, every decision I make. Um, we're One of the great things I took from Starbucks is having a core set of values. I know at Starbucks, I think it was 10 different values. We started off there back in 2007 when I acquired the business outright. But it was too much. It was too much to remember, too much to communicate. So we over the course of a management offsite for a couple of days, we boiled it down to three core values that we use as kind of the guiding light for our business. And we talk about them all the time. I actually have calendar items to remind myself that I need to be talking about them often, and communicating them over and over again. We have competitions designed around these different values. We have a recognition program that involves these kind of poker chips, and on the other side of the poker chips are the values of the company. So we try to walk the talk, and
Was the
make sure.
merchandise
Yeah.
division kind of run as a separate entity? I know it was about 200 million in size. So in some ways, you kind of had a middle market company within the larger brand. Is that accurate, or was Howard more involved in it than?
Yeah, no, I mean, let me be clear. It was a category management structure. So there was the beverage department, which was billions. There was food, which was, number two. There was whole bean coffee, which was number three. And then there was this little tiny business called merch.
Right.
So yeah, and remember that's retail dollars as well. So, it was it like running a business? It was like running a sales organization in which we make our own products and then have to push them out to several thousand retail stores around the country. Does that make sense?
But you had some flexibility, it sounds like, with
Oh, for
regards to
sure.
forming the culture there, which is good.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So how much of that did you kind of bring to Brenthaven and the work that you've been doing more recently?
Sorry, Brand. Let me be clear. The values that I'm talking about are the values of Brenthaven,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
At
Got it.
Starbucks, we didn't distill the 10. I'm referring to the company I'm in now, which
Thank
is
you. Got it.
Brenthaven,
Terrific.
then turned into Pioneer Square Brands. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and and yeah, sorry. So what was your question?
Yeah, so I was trying to get at that cultural assimilation. So it sounds like, yeah, I misunderstood. I thought you had kind of taken the Starbucks core values and boiled it down for the merch division. I thought that's kind of an interesting approach.
That would get me into a lot of trouble. No,
right.
No, I didn't do that.
Instructors wouldn't allow that.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, that's cool.
Sorry,
so
that was
the poker chip and those types of things. That was all at the Brent Haven.
Yeah, that was all Brent Haven. We hire based on those values. At the end of every interview, you have to send an email to the hiring manager saying hire or no hire or no hire. And you have to, include in your description, like, here's how I think this person would fit in with our culture and values.
What would you say was kind of the most unusual thing or uniqueness about the company culture at Brent Haven?
You mean when I acquired it or after I acquired it?
Yeah, well, after, I think, kind of more the impact during the time you were there.
Well, those transitions are always tough. When I acquired the business, it was about 30 people in Bellingham, Washington, which is about an hour and a half north of Seattle. I was the kind of the big bad corporate raider from Seattle. I had to kind of get to know the team and show them that I wasn't that guy, right? That I was there to help us and help them. So I think, probably the most important thing in a transition like that is just being a man of the people. I remember I went out and I worked on the warehouse floor for a day, putting bags in boxes and shipping labels and getting them out there for the UPS guy. I think you got to be willing to get your hands dirty whenever you're leading an organization.
That's very common, Scott. We've heard that so often with other CEOs. And, it's a humbling experience, but it demonstrates your humility to the others that are there. But also, you can feel their pain, right? You're there and understanding that. Did you do that in other jobs? Was that something that you learned along the way at Starbucks or Bausch & Lomb? Or
Yeah, That was very much a Starbucks thing. I remember we'd do these retail store tours, and we'd go out and see how merchandise was being displayed in the stores. And I remember this sense of urgency to like make the merchandise display look better in every store I visited and go pull stock from the back and merchandise, pull everything forward, clean it up, make it look right. So yeah, I've always been that kind of guy.
Yeah, cool. That's a really, really interesting and kind of a common thread we've seen with a lot of successful CEOs. Let's shift gears a little bit, and we're getting close to time, so I want to kind of get into kind of how you make bets on people. What do you look for when you're looking to invest in people to join your teams?
Well, the first thing I always look for is are they really passionate about the business, about previous roles they've had, about the people they work with. That's having a genuine interest in our company is first. And I oftentimes start off the interview just saying, hey, tell me what questions you have for me. And the depth of those questions is a very telling sign.
Right.
Not
how
just
much thought they put into it.
Yeah. Did they look at not just did they look at the website, but did they think about how this is going to be a good fit for them? And are they asking questions that are probing so that they can figure that out for themselves?
Sounds like curiosity is one of the things you look for then too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I always look for people that have kind of a genuine nature. We just, big egos don't do well here. You've got to be, humble in the way you approach life. And so I look for people that I think are going to be coachable, that they listen, that they're not just talking the whole time. So that's super important for me. And then I look for results, and at the end of the day, we can all be, genuine, passionate people, but if we're not getting results in the marketplace, then we're not going to be in business. So I look for people that got results, hopefully in a similar role, doing something similar. That's always a win. And so those are kind of the three things that I think about in hiring.
How do you interview and hire? Do you prefer the one-on-one? Do you do panels? Do you let people kind of vet people within the organization before you see them? What's your kind of strategy with that?
For a small to medium-sized business, we've got a pretty extensive process. It starts with a 30-minute phone screen with the hiring manager, and that's usually just kind of what questions you have and tell me a little bit about yourself. Then we move into some personality testing. We get those results back.
Is that kind of like DIST or PXT? What types?
We use PI testing and PLI.
Mm-hmm.
So PI is kind of the personality side, and PLI is more the how quickly do you learn. From there, if they look like a good fit for the role and for our company, then we move on to in-person meetings. And usually that's a day of 5 to 6 meetings, 1 hour each with key people in our organization.
And if you have just a very small period of time, and assuming that this isn't a direct report, maybe it's somebody that reports to one of your direct reports or deeper in the organization, but they know you have a vested interest and you like to see them. Maybe it's a top sales position perhaps, or maybe an important part of manufacturing or customer service, and you just have a limited time. How do you spend that? What do you kind of probe for and look for in that executive or that manager that's coming in?
Emotional intelligence. Yeah, I look for emotional intelligence. I look for people that they know what they do well. They know what their weaknesses are, and they're not afraid to talk about it. They know that the role they're going to play is not just the job they're going to do, but how they're going to add to the culture of the organization. So that's really what I look for.
Well, Scott Armstrong, you've been very, very generous with your time. We appreciate that. We do have one last question for you. We like to ask this all the CEOs, and that's kind of what career and life advice would you give to someone that's got their eyes on the corner office?
I wish I had something really unique and different. I honestly, what I've learned is that when you go looking for your job, say you're coming out of college, don't worry about the title, don't worry about the salary, don't worry about your brand. Just go find something that you enjoy doing. And I really believe that if you do that, then work becomes seamless with your life. It's not hard to go to work. You look forward to it, and you become great at it as a result. You learn, you're engaged, you're passionate about it. And ultimately, I believe the market rewards you for that knowledge, that expertise, that love, that passion. So, it really is about finding your passion. I think that's what's worked for me.
Scott, thank you so much. We've really enjoyed hearing your story and journey into the corner office.
Thanks, Brant.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.